I'm legitimately concerned that an entire segment of some of the most historic and iconic cards in history could be at risk. This isn't scare tactics. This is a real conversation, and we've got to have it. Let's data dive. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Market Movers video. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot, and this week, a little bit more philosophy, a little bit more high-level conversation. I want to get the conversation going with all of you in the comments because I'm going to take your feedback into a much longer form conversation between Jeff and I over on the Jeff Wilson podcast, hopefully in the coming weeks. And what am I talking about today? I'm worried. I've been thinking about something. I unfortunately had to miss the National recently. I got ill. Parker filled in for me as you guys saw the video, and I'm back now. And I was thinking about, okay, the National and all the different types of cards there. And I was thinking about vintage. And something sparked when I saw a video that Jeff put out over on the Sports Card Investor channel with Reeves, where they were going hunting for an investment card. Or so Jeff thought. Jeff wanted to get an investment card, something for like a year from now, maybe even longer. Reeves had other ideas. Over on the Card Crew channel, you know he likes to flip cards. That's kind of his hustle. It's the hustle of a lot of these young kids. They're trying to work up. They're trying to build their bankroll and build their card collection up overall. And an interesting exchange ensued, and I want you to watch the clip here.
Look at that one. Josh Allen, rookie auto, 1 of 2.
That's cool. But you know, if we're talking investment, like real investment card, how about Joe Montana's rookie card? You got Dan Marino's rookie card autographed. Reeves, if you want to go real investment, right down here, vintage. That's the stuff long-term that has been always the most consistent.
I don't want to hold something for a long time. So my collection right now, in the future, I do see myself holding things and taking them. But where my collection is at right now, I'm just trying to grow it more so than waiting a long time. Now, obviously, buying that will grow your collection over many, many years, but that's a lot of money to have tied up. That'd be a good chunk of what I have in my collection.
So you just like the quick flips because it allows you to make money and then
yes,
buy more.
I think that's a good strategy, and eventually I think that's definitely something I should do.
All right.
But now, I don't think I have enough capital to be able to hold stuff.
It wouldn't kill you to buy a little vintage as part of your collection today and lock that away. Because when you're my age, you're going to be pretty happy you did.
I have looked at vintage. Vintage is so boring. Come here and tell me that this card is not cooler than that one.
Dude, Joe Montana.
No,
that's history, man.
That's not about,
that's history.
It's not about the player.
That's history.
I'm not arguing.
Joe Montana has so many rings. Josh Allen could only hope to have one.
This isn't where we're at.
Joe Montana's got a pile of them.
That's not what we're arguing. We're arguing which card looks nicer. And I'm telling you, Joe Montana is better than Josh Allen as a player, but I'm not. But there's nothing in the world that can convince me that's a nicer looking card.
History.
I don't care. It's not a nicer looking card because it has some history.
All right, so I saw that clip of Reeves and Jeff, and it just kind of made some light bulbs go off. This was already a concept that I'd been thinking about, but that one was just like proof is in the pudding. Like how many fathers and sons or parents and children are having that exact conversation at the National, at card shops, at card shows, shopping on eBay, talking about the cards. And the dad's like, oh, I want the player that I collected when I was young, or I want this iconic card, or I know what a good investment is. And the child is just like, I want that shiny thing, even for the player who's not as good, because it's shiny and it's cool looking and I like it more. And there's really something to that. So I heard a term that made me chuckle, and that is broccoli hair. Apparently it's the broccoli haircut that's all very popular with the teenage boys these days. And it was 80% broccoli haircuts at the Card Kids Trade Zone at the National from what I heard. And so I made a little joke here, threw the broccoli hair onto Drake on the infamous meme, pointing out that a lot of these youngsters today, not necessarily interested in an 8-part series documentary on the history of baseball by Ken Burns. Unfortunately, many of them not so interested in that. They don't have the patience or the desire or the attention span or the interest. Interest is really the biggest thing. To sit down and just go, let me learn all about Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb and all the way up to the newer era through 2009, 1840s to 2009. It's well worth watching if you haven't. but it's going to be a tough sell to get some 14, 15-year-old to do that. They're far more interested in TikTok, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, social media, quick fix, quick hit, shiny object syndrome, literally in the case of cards. Who's the hottest athlete? How far did they hit that home run? What did they do? What type of historical thing? Oh, highlight reel dunk, whatever the thing might be. That's what they're into, and then they're on to the next thing, and they're on to the next day, and they're on to the next player, and they're on to the next card, and they're on to the next flip, and that's how a lot of them are doing it. It just is. I know it makes a lot of other people, old man shaking their fist at the sky, but that's kind of how it goes, and it's a reality that you have to acknowledge. It's how it goes. Today's Market Movers video is sponsored by Whatnot. Whatnot has live auctions of all kinds of sports and trading cards every day and night, starting at just $1 for packs, boxes, breaks, singles, and more. It's a ton of fun, and if you scan the QR code on your screen or use the special link in our show description below, you'll get $15 in free credit when you sign up for Whatnot. So you saw Reeves disparaging the Montana. This card you could take, this Roger Clemens, down risk rookie card, also just not really that appealing of a card. They'd much rather have the Superfractor, the on-card auto, the game-used relic, etc. And to be totally honest, I can relate to that. I really can. I've talked about it in the past. 80s cards just don't jazz me up. I'm going to be 40 in October. 80s cards, I'm an 80s baby. I love 80s music, but I do not like 80s cards. They don't excite me. I don't really have any desire to own most of them. And so what Reeves was saying kind of resonated with me. And it's not, again, I agree with, it's not about the player. It's about the card. It doesn't do much for me. I'd rather have a really cool, flawless Joe Montana than I would like Joe Montana's signed rookie card. If it's for my collection, and if it's for an investment piece, okay, we're going to get into these different tiers, and that's where I think the debate actually starts. So before I do that, vintage era, 1986 and earlier. I've defined in the past video 1987 to 92 as junk wax, and then we start getting into the 90s and beyond. So I'm going to call everything 86 and earlier, for all intents and purposes, vintage. Let's talk about tier 1. These are the players, especially their like top or only rookie cards, that I would say are very secure and should appreciate over time. Specifically rookie cards here, okay? Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, Nolan Ryan, Sandy Koufax, Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, Lou Alcindor, a.k.a. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We got the scoring leaders, Dr. J, Magic, Bird here, Wilt Chamberlain, George Mikan, because it was the first Bowman set, first basketball set ever made, Hannes Wagner. Yes, it's Hannes, by the way. It is Hannes Wagner. It is not Honus. You can say Honus, like 60% of people say Honus, but it is Hannes, short for Johannes. Just get that out there. Ty Cobb, not T-Cobb, Ty Cobb. Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Joe Montana, I think for investment purposes. In spite of the fact that I'm saying this and Reeves did, people know it's a stable card for the quarterback who was considered the greatest of all time before Tom Brady. And it's a very, very stable card. It's going to be high demand over time, just as like an alternative investment asset piece. Dan Marino, John Elway, Jerry Rice, Bronco Nagurski, same reason as the Mikan in many ways, and then I threw Barry Bonds into the end of this list. So if we go tier 2, these should be secure, like relatively secure over time, at least to hold their value and hold some interest. Mark McGwire, Cal Ripken Jr., Ricky Henderson, accidentally threw another Ripken on here, Ernie Banks, Stan Musial. By the way, here's a pronunciation one. Musial or Musial? I believe it's Musial. That's actually how it's pronounced, but everybody says Musial. So we'll go with either one. Lou Gehrig, Roger Clemens, Reggie Jackson, Pete Rose, Joe DiMaggio, Bob Gibson, Ted Williams, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Charles Barkley, Dominique Wilkins, Hakeem Olajuwon, Isaiah Thomas, Patrick Ewing, John Havlicek, Pete Maravich, Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, Bob Cousy, and James Worthy. And I threw like James Worthy and Dominique Wilkins on here because of the 86 Fleer set in particular. And then for football, Terry Bradshaw, Joe Namath, Chuck Bednarik, Roger Staubach, Fran Tarkenton, Steve Young, Mike Ditka, Mean Joe Green, Otto Graham, Lawrence Taylor, Eric Dickerson, and Slingin' Sammy Baugh. So some of these have to do with being like the early sets here with Sammy and with Bednarik. You know, Namath is always going to be very popular because the Jets haven't been good since he was their quarterback. Sorry about that. So I think all of these players should be relatively secure. 3, we start to get into some vulnerabilities. And look, you can debate me in the comments about these tiers if you want. It's more about the point. There's going to be individual ones we disagree on, but it's more about the point. And the point is that as you move down the mountain, we've actually already seen this happen with 90 stuff and more current. Players even who are very, very good, their cards aren't worth very much anymore. Players who were actually incredibly good in many cases, their cards aren't worth a ton. Torrey Holt. Torrey Holt's cards, not worth a ton. Vintage has like its own mystique and its own period, and many of these players, like I said, have only one rookie card, and it's kind of propped it up. There's also some other dynamics that we're going to get into about why the values are so high. So let's get into this tier, and then if you want to yell at me in the comments, you can. Frank Robinson, Brooks Robinson, Whitey Ford, Harmon Killebrew, Al Kaline, who I like, but I'll get into that more, Warren Spahn, Duke Snyder, we got Yogi Berra, Roger Maris, Don Drysdale, Roy Campanella, and Pee Wee Reese. So can you imagine walking up to 14-year-old in the Card Kids trade zone at the National and being like, hey, I got a card you're really going to want. It's this Don Drysdale. It's this Roy Campanella. This is what you're after. Give me all your downtowns, your kabooms, and I'm going to give you this Don Drysdale card. They're going to like, go, get out of here, dude. You're not supposed to be in the Card Kids trade zone. You're too old. So I think this is where, in spite of how incredibly, incredibly good these players were, in spite of how incredibly good they were, we're going to keep going. And by the way, one thing I should have mentioned too. I know somebody's going to go, oh, you missed Mike Schmidt. I didn't put everybody on this list. So just keep that in mind. This wasn't like every single player in existence. I'm just trying to pull really good examples. Keep going on here. Steve Carlton, George Brett, Lou Brock, Don Mattingly, Tony Gwynn, Juan Marichal, Kirby Puckett, Dwight Gooden, Ryan Sandberg, Jose Canseco, Ozzie Smith, Jim Palmer, Walt Frazier, Moses Malone, one of the most underrated players ever, Bill Walton, Alvin Hayes, Chris Mullin. By the way, I think this is a Mandela effect thing. Like, for years, I could have sworn it was Chris Mullins. Chris Mullins. And then I was like looking through my collection in 2019 when I got back into cards and was like, Mullen, huh? So let me know if you think that's a Mandela effect thing. If you don't know what Mandela effect is, look that up after this. Danny Ainge, Steve Spurrier, Fred Bolitnikoff, Len Dawson, Tony Dorsett, Randall Cunningham, and through Howie Long on here for good measure. All right, tier 4, these are the ones that I would say are certainly at risk. This is my opinion, but I think these players are at risk. Bob Lemon, Larry Doby, Luis Aparicio, Orlando Cepeda, Minnie Minoso, Phil Rizzuto, Ron Santo, Eddie Murray, Phil Niekro, Wade Boggs, Dennis Eckersley, Gaylord Perry, Walt Bellamy, Connie Hawkins, Wes Unseld, Lenny Wilkins, Kurt Rambis, Ralph Sampson, Mel Blount, Charlie Joyner, Jack Lambert, George Blanda, Boomer Esiason, and William the Refrigerator Perry. Biggest ring size in any sports history, I think, according to Jostin's high school ring sizing thing. I think these players are all at risk. And there's one dynamic I want to talk about specifically that I think as you move down the tier of player, puts some players, even those especially like that would be in a tier 5 or lower, even more obscure, even more at risk. And that is that set collecting seems to be dying. I mean, dying. You go talk to anybody who's young about set collecting, they're not interested. In fact, I made up this graphic, okay? These numbers are not factual. This is not a Gallup poll. This is not based on any real science. This was my best guess, my gut feel. I think if you talk to 50s and up, a lot of them set collect in some capacity, or maybe that's all they do. I want to collect the entire set of PSA 7 or higher graded 1955 tops. You'll hear somebody say that, okay? I'm collecting the entire play ball set. I'm collecting, 69 tops. I'm collecting whatever, 51 Bowman. Whatever their budget and whatever their audacity is, they set that goal. And the thrill of the chase is really fun. And you have something to be focused on to go off after over time. Maybe you just really love one of those sets in particular. I said maybe 40% of that demographic set collects. It might be higher. Initially, I was like, man, it's like 80%. I swear every single older, vintage collector that I talk to is like, set collect. I collect a set. I got the PSA registry. I'm number 2 on the set registry right now. That's me, okay? And that's cool. Like if that's what they're into, that's really cool. I think if you get into the 40s, it's 10 to 15% at the most. In 30s, 8%. 20s and younger, sub 2%. And I think in this teenage broccoli hair crowd, it's less than 0.01%. Nobody set collects. Nobody. Nobody. I could go out here all week and sit and watch and wait for every single 18 and under to come in and say, what do you think of set collecting? They're gonna be like, what is that? Or no, I don't do that. You know, I just collect whatever. I collect downtowns or collect my favorite team or my favorite player, or I flip or whatever. They don't do set collecting. And because of that, that puts a lot of players' cards, some of which are very expensive, at risk. This is Home Run Baker, Hall of Famer, 3-time World Series winner, 63 career WAR, 96 homers, not a ton. Power wasn't always there back then. 307 batting average, 235 stolen bases, career OPS plus 135. Great name, third baseman. Fantastic, fantastic name. Did you know about Home Run Baker? You big Home Run Baker fan, all of you out there? Can't wait to start your Home Run Baker PC. Got to have all of his cards. Well, here's his 1915 Cracker Jack, number 2, base, PSA 8, pop 11, only 2 graded higher. Sold for $18,600 in August of 2024. $18,600. How many of the younger generation, let's say 30 and under, 20 years from now, would have any interest in this card or in building out the entire complete set of Cracker Jack? Because that's what this is. This is somebody wanting to have the highest possible grade of an entire set. And somebody would buy the 8 because there's 11, and maybe because they can't afford one of 2 of the 9s. So they're trying to get their, the highest possible graded set of their own for the set registry on PSA. And they shell out almost $19,000 for a Home Run Baker Cracker Jack card. Beautiful card. Love that Cracker Jack set. You know what else you could have is this Ken Griffey Jr., Essential Credentials. You're a 90s kid like me. Which of these 2 cards do you want? Griffey. 10 out of 10 times, 1,000 out of 1,000 times. It's the Griffey. One of the best sets of the 90s. For the best player of the 90s. Opportunity cost. Which way am I going to go? Got to pick one. I'm going Griffey. What about today's crowd? I also wouldn't mind having this card. Shohei Ohtani Bowman Chrome Gold Refractor Rookie PSA 10, Pop 23. $19,500. Or maybe this Bobby Witt Jr. Bowman Chrome Gold Prospect Auto First, BGS 95, $19,200. These are all the opportunity costs, and there's millions, maybe not millions. There are a lot of cards that you could buy, or multiple cards for $19,000 instead of this Home Run Baker that helps you complete your set. So it's a question, just over time, is the demand still going to be there for complete sets for players like this? And if not, where does this card go from there? How far down could it actually come in price before somebody, broccoli-haired or otherwise, could come and say, I got to have this card? This is some data from GemRate, our friends over at GemRate. Universal population, 174 of these total graded across all grades. I went down to the PSA 1 for $613. So we're $613 up to $19K. I don't know how much a PSA 9 would be because I don't think one has sold. But look at that distribution. Maybe we're talking total value, theoretical value of all of these cards based on these market prices of $250,000, $300,000, maybe more. For this Home Run Baker card, one of however many on the entire checklist. I don't know. I don't know if the demand is going to be there in the future. This is me asking you. Like, debate me in the comments and tell me why Home Run Baker in a PSA 1 or in a PSA 8 or any grade in between is going to have this price value 20 years from now. One wild card for me in my mind is obscure stuff, like things that aren't Topps, Bowman, Play Ball, Gaudi, the most notable sets, and where do those stand up over time? On the one hand, you could say, well, if a youngster is going to go to vintage, they're going to go to what's most known and what's most iconic. On the other hand, if somebody's really passionate about a specific player or team, then maybe they are going to want the obscure, oddball, wild card stuff that you don't see every day. I like that rabbit hole. I like the obscure stuff. It's very interesting to me. I don't always own a ton of it. I do have some, odd pieces, and I have an eclectic collection overall. But these are the kind of cards that I would wonder about. Here's a 1976 Hostess Thurman Munson that went for $1,500 a little over a year ago, PSA 10. How about a Kellogg's Tom Seaver from 1971 for almost $3K? We got a 1962 Jello Roberto Clemente. This is like a Jello box, intact, graded by PSA. PSA 5. $19,000. Same as the Home Run Baker and all those other cards we saw. You want the Griffey or the Jello box with Roberto Clemente on it? And a 1947 Bond-bred perforated Ted Williams, very, very historical looking card, cool image, facsimile auto, sold for $4,000. Where do these fall? I don't know. I don't know where the obscure stuff falls. So how about the devil's advocate? Because I'm not trying to come and tell you like this is a fact and this is set in stone. So I reached out to a friend, Sean, Victory Investments on Instagram. And Sean is uniquely passionate about vintage and about players who broke the color barrier as well as modern. He's a big Kansas City guy, big Chiefs guy, Mahomes. He started dabbling with Bobby Witt Jr. cards. So he's got a lot of good stuff. If you want a really cool little documentary, by the way, go watch this like 8-minute Satchel Paige mini doc on his channel. Very, very well done. Well worth the watch. You got to go check this out. But I said, hey, Sean, like, tell me what's going on here. What points am I missing? Play devil's advocate for me to convince the world that vintage is here to stay. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. The next 20 years, your vintage cards are safe, whether PSA 1 no names all the way up to PSA 9 mantles. They're all going to be good. And he agreed in the sense that the top players, those ones in the tier 1 and tier 2 that I described, they should be good. They should be good over time. But maybe there is some concern down below. But the thing that he pointed out, and I really like this, he said, when you're younger, and I don't think this is his quote, but this is what he said to me. When you're younger, you look to the future. When you're older, you look back to the past. And as we mature and as we get older, our collecting interests change, our tastes change. And he said, look, there's a lot of ultra-modern stuff. It can be pretty confusing. I've met younger people who just said, it's too much. I want to go back to the roots. I like the history. I like the legacy. I like the story of the past and how we got to here. And Sean likes it so much that he wrote this book called Chasing Jackie Robinson that you can check out on Amazon. Story here, I think, of the grandpa and his son, going after the 52 tops, Jackie Robinson. And he's trying to reach an audience and say, look, study this, study history, appreciate the players and the athletes and the cards and the sets that got us to where we are today, and don't neglect them and don't disparage them and don't just cast them by the wayside. Go after these cards too and make sure that they have at least a place in your collection. So I used ChatGPT to take Sean's face, and this is what I guess here he is. This is what it kind of spitted out. It's not too bad. Back to the Drake meme. If you go on Beckett and you search Bobby Witt, there are 10,645 different cards that show up in their search. There's like 220 different one-of-ones, okay? So Sean's saying, no, if I want Jackie Robinson, it's going to be the 48 Leaf or it's going to be the 52 tops. And he has other cards beyond that, but those are like his two cards. So much simpler just to chase after one of those, to try to find one with really strong eye appeal for the grade, to get good value. That's what he's saying, and he thinks there's more people like that. This is Nate from In Cardboard Veritas on Instagram, and this is his son. His son used to be really into the shiny new stuff. Nate's really into vintage, very, very knowledgeable about vintage. I always enjoy talking to them at the National every year. Missed them this year because I wasn't there. But they're into vintage, both of them. Look at the shirt. They do this together. They do vintage together. And I think that's the one saving grace, is if more of the older generation would spend less time getting cantankerous and curmudgeon-y and grumpy and just sitting back at their booths at the show, and instead engaging. If you have a young person walk up to your table, like, ask them, do you do vintage? Are you into vintage? Do you know much about it? Share the joy and the passion with them. That's going to help. That's going to help over time. And then maybe that maturity curve of people as they get older and they look to the past, maybe it's fine. Maybe it's all going to be fine. People are going to go, you know what? I thought it was pretty cool that my grandpa or my dad collected that whole Cracker Jack set. I would like to have that as an heirloom, or I would like to go chase down this other set that I thought was really, really beautiful, and try to get one of those when I have more disposable income. So beyond that, for the devil's advocate, I want you to let me know down in the comments. I'm going to read these comments. I'm going to study them, and then I'm going to bring them to the conversation with Jeff on the Jeff Wilson podcast on this topic, because I think it's a really important one. Vintage cards are amazing, have a lot of history. At the same time, there's just so much to choose from in the sports card world. Plus, if you're into non-sports or memorabilia or anything else, we None of us have unlimited budgets. And when you get into vintage, for a lot of people, especially if you're younger, it can be pretty cost prohibitive. So will these prices stand over time? Is vintage here to stay? You let me know. I think the vintage that's most at risk, this would be my thesis, obscure players, tier 4 and below, low grade. So the lower the tier, the more that the low grade cards become at risk, if you know what I mean. Like somebody might go, oh, I'll take a PSA 9 of this vintage card of that tier 5 player because it's like $120, whereas the low dollar stuff is going to be like, really poor condition. So I think low grade. And then I think that cards specifically that are propped up today by set collectors with really high values are the ones that are at risk. But you let me know down in the comments below if you want access to data of all kinds of indexes, sports card indexes, pricing charts, track your entire vintage collection in Market Movers. Go to marketmoversapp.com, use code DIVE, and you'll get 14 days free plus 20% off for life. I can't wait to read what you think down below. And until next time, happy investing, keep on collecting, and make sure to have fun.